All right, hello everybody. My name is Chris. I am the managing director for GSES and um, our subsidiary Diagno, which is a startup that we began about 18 months ago. And I appreciate you all coming here today. We've gained a lot of experience over those 18 months, and it's a pleasure to be able to share that here with you today. Diagno was started in sort of late 2021 as a tool that was used to support GSES consultancy work for state and local government. So most of our work as an owner's engineer is with state and local government. We also work with private enterprise, but GSES helps, again, mostly state and local government with procurement exercises for solar PV, batteries, and now electric vehicle charging infrastructure. We offer the full owner's engineering suite of services, right from oh, sorry, just getting some feedback from someone. Just mute people. So yeah, we offer the full OE suite of services, right from inception in concept to QA and liquidated damages support, all for a CNI solar and batteries, or CNI scale. And it's in supporting those customers that the need for Diagno arose. And the next slide I have will detail that out a little bit more. Since we've developed the platform, we've done a pretty good job with building it out. We currently have over 1,000 sites, which represents about 3,000 devices. A device would be a OEM inverter, a smart meter, a third-party comms device, etc. We have about 40 partners that are helping us to provide data and giving us feedback. And we're representing nearly, saying over, but it's nearly 100 megawatts of solar PV, but we should be over 100 megawatts of solar in the next couple of weeks. We're growing rapidly, averaging about 50 devices per week, adding to the platform. And the plan is to accelerate that growth, of course, into the future. One of the keys to our growth has been the New South Wales Smart Sensing Network grant that we received in October 2022. The grant was via the University of New South Wales, but this grant is using Diagno as the baseline, or as the basis for the development activity that's happening. And we get to work with UNSW, UTS, the Australian Photovoltaic Institute, and then we also have members on the team from CSIRO and Ausgrid. And that allows us to build the machine learning platform that will be the engine for Diagno. And so I'll get into what that actually means in a second, but that's sort of the story of how we got from where the concept of this was to where we are today. So again, I mentioned we worked with those customers, the councils and state government groups in particular, and we kept seeing the same issues pop up over and over again with those customers' portfolios. So in general, I mean, the big headliner is that portfolio owners tend to have installed multiple systems across their asset suite using multiple technologies installed at various times by various contractors. And so when we were seeing how they were managing these systems, generally they would manage it with additional personnel looking at various monitoring platforms, and they were trying to glean insights from those various monitoring platforms, and or appointing multiple O&M contracts across their platform or across their asset range, and then dealing with the difference in service delivery across those O&M providers. The O&M provider typically was also the EPC, and the EPCs tend to be built for providing EPC and not necessarily O&M. And so as a consultant working with those groups, we just saw that it was sort of a fragmented space, and there was nothing that was in the market that could just sit over top as a net and pull it all together. When we went out to find a product that could do that, we really didn't come up with exactly what we were looking for. And so we started to develop Diagno, and that was about 18 months ago. Current monitoring systems provide, the ones that we see in the market, currently provide the asset managers with really strong data set and beautiful dashboards. But at the end of the day, we were finding that the asset managers that we were working with were not empowered to take action. Generally, the asset managers we were working with are also managing HVAC systems and insulation, glazing, and a bunch of other things that are not solar. And so, as part of their scope, with all the data that they're receiving, it was challenging for them to take action or take the right action. And again, if that is offloaded to a third party, then there's different incentives in place for those third parties. And so we were seeing, again, a fragmented structure there. C&I scale asset owners with only a few or a single asset generally don't get the attention from the O&M provider that they require. As you can imagine, an O&M provider that is working with groups that have large portfolio will be incentivized to give them their attention. Whereas, a single strata, for example, with a single 40 kilowatt solar array might not get the attention that they deserve. So again, something was needed, we saw, that would sit over top of groups of portfolios and with single assets and with every mix in between, and can allocate resources accordingly. O&M providers may not be able to optimize their activities as well as they could or should, and then they must pass this on to their customers. And this comes basically from employing additional monitoring personnel to look at the various dashboards that are possibly required for the various installs that they are managing, and an ability to triage issues and then logically grouping work orders. And again, this is sort of a perfect set of activities for a machine learning platform to do. And so as we were developing Diagno, we said, well, this is a tool that really should be doing these things and providing that efficiency and optimization to both the asset manager and O&M providers. And then finally, asset owners and/or O&M providers may not be prioritizing maintenance actions based on a set of values. So whatever the value system is for that particular asset, whether it's financial, which would tend to be the case most often, or maybe CO2 reduction or uptime or whatever it is, the activities that are being done for that asset should be prioritized as such. So again, a perfect thing for technology to help with. So say these are my values. In a simple example would be return on investment. I want to make sure that any maintenance activity that I undertake gives me a good return on investment. If I'm spending a lot of money to fix a single panel of a several hundred kilowatt array, maybe that's not a great way to spend my money. So these are the sorts of decisions that can be made and can be assisted by an intelligent platform. Again, since the inception of Diagno, we've made significant progress. And I think one of the keys that have come out of this is just how much in the C&I space of issues that we are finding. So in the past 6 months alone, we've detected over $1.1 million of underperformance across the group of assets that we're looking at, which at the beginning I mentioned 40 partners, 3,000 devices, almost 100 megawatts of system. And that's a significant chunk of change. And that's only just in the past 6 months. And we're still going through diagnostics now. So there's a lot to be done in this space is sort of the takeaway. And that problem is going to only continue to grow as the industry continues to scale, not only in Australia, but globally. This is sort of the value prop in very simple terms. We basically want to close the loop for operations and maintenance. As a baseline, you should be getting accurate performance and savings figures, and your portfolio should be performing optimally. If that's not the case, we do deep diagnostics, and I'll sort of outline what that is in the next slide. On the underperformance, the rectification works are actioned according to return on investment. So you'll get an estimate for how much the rectification should cost within a range and a tolerance, and what the return on investment is to restore the system back to performing. And that will help you to choose whether you should take action or you should potentially wait, or if not taking action is actually the right call, and wait till system decommissioning at end of life. This is still in development, but the works will be grouped and optimized according to location, work type, subcontractor, etc. And that can help for, again, going back to the statement in my last slide, where if you're an asset owner with a single asset, you might be able to leverage the benefits of the platform to work with subcontractors or operations and maintenance personnel that work in your area and have other work to do there. The asset manager and subcontractor payment gateway is, again, in development, but that's something that we'll be able to offer so that there's a simple way for asset owners to get the work done that they need to get done. And then once the subcontractor has done the maintenance activity and submitted a report, we've closed the loop and we should see performance restored. And that way we have a full flow cycle here, and we're able to provide highly efficient, optimized operations and maintenance via a single platform. Diagno is a hardware agnostic platform. We've currently mapped the APIs for the systems that we're displaying here. But basically the premise is we'll map any API that a partner is using, as long as the system has an API that we can pull data from and that it's connected. So that's the key, but this allows us to be incredibly flexible. Mapping an API can take as short as 3 weeks. Sometimes it can take longer, but then whatever it is that you've got in your system, we can then pull straight into the platform and begin running the machine learning diagnostics on that input. The machine learning, as I mentioned, is critical to this whole thing. So at the moment, we're doing a lot of the diagnostics manually because we are training the machine learning platform. As you might imagine, you need a human reinforced learning system in order to do that. And so that's the stage we're at right now. But if we continue doing it the same way we're doing it now, then it's not a scalable platform. But with a trained machine learning platform, then we can scale this thing effectively infinitely. At this stage, we've defined level 1 and level 2 faults. And you can think of level 1 basically as a suite of AC faults, and then level 2 as everything beneath that. So DC, inverter fault codes, things like that. And the machine learning can go to from level 1 to level 2 and provide a deep diagnostic based on all the issues that it's seen thus far and how we've trained it. So here I'm just showing a few. On the left, it's the level 1 AC faults. You can look just as an example, the second chart down shows inverter clipping. The fourth chart down shows afternoon shading. And on the right, we've got some deeper level diagnostics, but are grouped into some categories here. So, you've got severe underperformance that might occur because you have an inverter go completely out. You've got weekend underperformance, which might occur because you have zero export systems and you have low consumption on weekend, etc. But these are all things that a machine learning algorithm can detect and categorize and present, and it should save a significant amount of resource going forward, again, providing that efficiency to our customers, to O&M personnel, and to asset owners. So now I just want to take you through a few case studies because it's been very interesting to see what sort of issues are occurring in the C&I space for solar in particular, because that's where our focus is at the moment. And so I just think it's good to articulate what's actually happening with the platform via case study. And then we can go through questions and answers at the end. So here's one where a very distinctive generation profile was showing up. You can see in the afternoon, you have that double sort of knee that's happening, and that happened every day, and losses were greater in the summer months. So the diagnostic was done and determined that this was due to shading. And you can see below here, there's a sawtooth roof. And so that's where the shading was originating from. So we were able to detect that. But then when we examined the design, it showed that the panels were mounted in portrait and that the lower row of each section on the sawtooth roof was in parallel with the higher row of each section on the sawtooth roof. And so what was happening is as each section of the sawtooth roof was shading the next, that whole string was affected negatively. And if the design were done so that they were mounted in landscape instead of portrait, then you could recover 20% of that loss that was happening. And so this is a design issue, actually. The system in this case was old enough so that no action was financially justified, because you basically have to remove that whole part of the array and twist it 90 degrees. However, at replacement, you'd want to consider that design implication for the next system that would go in. So it's quite an interesting result here, because no action is recommended. However, this is information that's very powerful for the customer, and they can then take that into the next phase of their of the solar on this roof. Okay, the next one. We have underperformance detected. The system was degraded proportional to the capacity ratio between the two inverters. There's two inverters on this particular site. And prior to the inverter tripping off, temperature derating was in effect, and was reported via the inverter error log prior to the trip-off event. So quite interesting that that happened. And so one of the two inverters was completely off, of course, because that's what we had found via the generation profile. And again, the error log showed that the inverter had been derating due to overtemperature. When we reviewed the design, it showed that the AC breaker for that inverter was not sized appropriately for the temperature derating. And so we suspected that the AC breaker had just tripped off due to high current, high temperature at that particular time, due to the sizing of that breaker. And when the facility manager went to check, that was indeed the case, and he flipped the AC breaker back on. And we advised that we should continue monitoring, and if this were to happen again, that they should replace the AC breaker. As you can see, we detected this one quite quickly, and we were able to restore it back to full performance after detection and after liaising with the facility manager. Finally, this is a really interesting one, because we found a generation profile here with multiple underperformance issues. And so this is difficult because you have to kind of pull apart what's going on here. And some of these issues can lay on top of each other and make it difficult to diagnose. But again, this is the power of the platform and the ability to pull these things apart and provide a effective diagnostic for the O&M personnel. So this one actually had a CER style inspection after the diagnostic was completed, and it effectively confirmed all four of the issues that we had diagnosed. So we had one inverter that had completely tripped off. There was no AC voltage, so it suggests the AC breaker had tripped. We also had seasonal generation loss, winter mornings. This is again due to a similar issue that we saw on that sawtooth roof previously, where the panels were mounted in portrait instead of in landscape. And so we had row to row shading there as well. We also detected frequent tripping across all inverters. And this was actually due to grid undervoltage. And so that was an intermittent fault, but we were able to detect that amongst all the other faults. And then finally, we found a bunch of string faults where strings were actually off, so not inputting into each inverter. And we were able to direct the CR inspector to those particular strings to confirm what was going on there, and indeed they were not inputting. So 4 overlapping issues on one system, one site. And we were able to diagnose all of them before anyone had gone to see the system, and then all 4 were effectively confirmed by the inspector. So I guess the point here is that having really good information coming from your site, really good data, and then also a system that allows you to draw insights from that data and provide it to your O&M personnel, so that they can go directly to the issue, knowing what equipment to bring so they can fix the issue in one truck roll, and then go back and report that system has been fully restored to fully performing, and closing the loop. This is sort of where we want to get to, where there's tens of thousands of these systems operating, and we want to be able to effectively work with them in the most efficient way possible. That's it from me on this. I think I'll just wait to Q&A at the end, but I'll turn over to Daniel to talk about the in the field side of things.
Thanks, Chris. Let me just share my screen here. Perfect. So thanks, everyone. I think that was really, really insightful, Chris, and thanks very much. And I think some of the points that you mentioned, I'll touch on now. But really, for myself, I'm one of the co-founders of Industrias Services Group, and we founded this business almost 4 years ago now, with the foresight, if you like, that saw the industry remarkably growing from a construction standpoint, but seeing a lot of gaps or foreseeing a lot of gaps when it comes to maintenance and after-sales service, and ensuring that these systems are performing the way that they were procured to do over a 10, 15, 20-year life cycle. And so we know that as these systems age, through the bulging of the construction market a couple of years ago, that the requirements will only grow in necessity and complexity. And so because of that fact, as well as the sheer size of the country and the myriad of different designs out there, we needed to provide a solution that was smarter, efficient, and transparent, but most importantly, centralized as well. So the current market, as what Chris touched on, was in many cases we saw that maintenance wasn't really mentioned at the point of sale. Often it was mentioned that maintenance is not needed, there's no moving parts. If it's tilted, and then rain will sort of wipe off a low to medium sort of soiling process. And so from that perspective, we saw a tremendous gap, even though we knew that it will be pushed up against us. The second side of things is the installation teams in many cases saw maintenance as being unviable to deliver. And for many good reasons, in fact, but we tried to sort of address that head on. And finally, it was sort of what's in it for me on those installers who were really sort of focused on construction and weren't really focused enough on the maintenance side of things. And so for us, we wanted to focus, and certainly the focus of this presentation is, why have scheduled solar maintenance? Why was it pitched a certain way, and why do we need it moving forward? So generally what people would associate with solar maintenance is optimizing performance, and that's obviously relevant. But often when you talk about solar maintenance, people think around just cleaning the solar panels, which again, in some cases might be needed, some cases it's not. But certainly it really revolves around, okay, how can we use maintenance to optimize system performance? But for us, there's a number of other factors which are equally, if not more important. The first factor is minimizing downtime. So should a fault occur on the system, how do you minimize the amount of time that it is offline? Thirdly, which is a factor which often gets overlooked, is reducing site risk. And we're dealing with an asset on an area of the facility where most people don't go to. Most people don't see the results of the electricity production firsthand. And so they therefore can't, they don't sort of see a lot of the site risk factors that might accumulate of the system, which presents a serious risk in many cases to the facility itself. Lifecycle cost predictability. For us, it's around ensuring that you can add the cost to the ROI of the system, and through the first three factors, you can therefore forecast the financial viability and the true ROI of the system through including the cost for maintenance, rather than leaving it out and having unpredictable costs throughout the system's life. And finally, having a partner that you can have and ensure system familiarity. So they understand the system, they understand the site induction requirements, and so when there's an issue, they can resolve it much quicker. But for us, really, the structure around maintenance in its ideal form is around three factors. One is ensuring on-site inspections, and Chris did touch on that remote monitoring obviously has its benefits, absolutely, but in many cases, on-site inspection is required to identify certain factors that remote monitoring can't, or to confirm its findings. So you've got the on-site inspections components, you've got remote monitoring component, which Chris mentioned, and then you need a mechanism to actually identify and, most importantly, attend to remediations. So it's not so, obviously it's important to identify issues and risks, but if you don't have a means to actually address and remediate those, then you're left with more of a problem than what you started. And so once you cover these three factors, you've got a system that performs optimally and safely. And so just to put some pictures that we've found over the last couple of weeks and months, you notice that, yes, I don't want to paint solar in a picture where you're seeing this as a dangerous asset, but certain things absolutely can happen. And some of these items you can see here would have been detected remotely, or if you don't have active monitoring, certainly wouldn't have been detected at all. And so you can see a common factor, which is isolator fires. Here, you see non-compliances where you see conduit going into an isolator on the top of that isolator, making it more conducive for water ingress. Burnt cables, browning componentry, sort of bent and curved modules there. And in the case of the top right-hand corner, you see corroded mounting, which has caused the solar module to actually fly off the mounting itself. In addition, you see elements around debris buildup, hanging cables, cable trays being flown up, dust buildup at the inverter level, isolators, non-compliant isolators being installed against the roof set. And so you can see the general theme. Obviously, I've got millions of these pictures from our side in terms of what we've picked up. But a critical factor here is to acknowledge that, one, systems need to be maintained, absolutely, through attrition. They can be superbly installed over time, but over time, wear and tear absolutely takes place, certainly because it's an externally facing asset. In touch with the elements, but also that remote monitoring is important, but must be used in combination with what we believe should be at least annual inspections on the asset physically. Finally, these are soiling conditions, and as Chris correctly described, soiling, reduced production can happen from a myriad of different elements, whether it be from soiling, whether it be from shading. I'm sure a number of us have had an HVAC asset that's been installed without really the approval or the knowledge of certain stakeholders that are responsible for the solar production. And so these certain things really need to be physically inspected as well. So just quickly about us. The way that we set Industrias up is very much around providing a partnership and centralized service, something which is scalable and something which we can provide a consistent and quality service nationwide, regardless of the location, of the client, of the system design, and to have the ability to either have complete asset ownership or to offer the customer flexibility around exactly how they wanted us to add value in the system itself. So anything from QA or audits straight after installation as an independent auditor, to reactive remediation work, to scheduled inspections with which we have multiple different levels depending on the requirement, system size and location, reactive remediation work, module cleaning, bird proofing, vegetation management, bespoke solar projects, like module replacements or module removals and reinstallations, everything in between. And so really the outcome here, whether it be you're an EPC, an installer, or an asset owner, you've got one customer and one partner who's able to provide you value on your solar assets or asset, regardless of what the requirement might be. And so touching on that is really around how do we offer value in the market and who do we offer value to and what is that value? So for solar retailers or installers or facility managers, a lot of the benefits are clear. You've got happier customers where you have continual touch points to those customers, whereas normally you would construct the system and often not have an excuse or a reason to continually engage with those particular customers. We provide resource support to your internal personnel through the maintenance process. More and more, we're seeing customers requiring maintenance within their particular tenders and requirements. We're also able to provide support for our customers nationwide, which we'll go through in a second, and as well provide upsell opportunities. Once you're doing maintenance and monitoring of a system, there's absolutely opportunities to identify for system increases, upgrades, battery retrofits, etc. But for a solar asset owner, what are the benefits? And of course, a lot of these are obvious. We talk about maximize returns, providing much needed resource support for those internally or for those champions they have internally who are monitoring the systems and trying their best to filter out through all the faults and understanding what needs to be done. Reducing site risk, as we touched on before, centralizing support, and overall improving the visibility and the production of that asset to make sure it's doing what it needs to. So how do we actually provide these benefits? So again, talking through the gaps in the market was really around the centralization and the delivery of maintenance and support. Often a challenge for customers or for installers were going through to multiple different contractors or partners throughout the country, obtaining different and varying levels of quality and forcing a logistical nightmare on their end without really the benefit of the financial outcome at the end. So for us, we've developed a job fulfillment process, which starts off with our proprietary customer portal through scheduling fulfillment and through final reports and recommendations that get undertaken and completed after every site visit. So whether it be us or someone else, a critical part around delivering solar monitoring for us is how can you provide transparency across that? How can you make it as easy as possible to log jobs through your particular provider, to understand where that job is at every stage of that process, and to communicate with your provider as and when needed. And our proprietary portal on the front end allows us to do that. And so whether it be a customer with 1,000 assets or an installer who has 1,000 customers or one customer or one asset, we can provide a centralized interface to interact with that customer. So at any one point in time, they understand where all their jobs are at, all their communications are at, and they're able to see a full history of all the jobs undertaken at their site or at all their sites. So it provides a tremendous amount of centralization and transparency when dealing with maintenance. For us, a critical factor then is around how can we provide the centralized front end, but then deliver a comprehensive and nationwide service on the back end. And for us, we've put in an enormous amount of effort to develop and train a vast network across the country of now more than 90 partners and internal personnel across our specific delivery framework. And that involves training them to ensure that they are CEC certified, have got the correct licenses, are trained in our specific technology, can fulfill our specific scope, fulfillment and scope process adequately and in a quality way, ensuring that they escalate issues into our internal engineers and process mechanisms, as well as deliver a comprehensive report that allows us to then compile that internally and deliver that in a consistent and quality manner to the end customers. And so for us, it's not just a matter of Googling a team and saying, "Hey, go for it." There's an enormous amount of work that goes into ensuring that we can deliver a quality and consistent process on the back end as well as on the front end. So all our customers need to do is log a job and know that that will get delivered at a quality outcome in the end. We would manage all the scheduling, all the logistics, all the on-site quality controls, and all the report compilations, so such that all our customers need to do is log a job and they get left with a completed report in the end. On the reporting, we believe we've got the most industry-leading and comprehensive reports in the market, where we will deliver a report after every site visit, whether that be from an inspection or a remediation job or a clean or vegetation management, whatever it might be. Whether it be regardless of the specific scope, every scope items has comments and pictures associated with it, as well as closing statements and recommendations, specifically if it's performance and safety related, or something should just be observation only to be observed over time. And that's really critical in what we recommend to our clients is, aside from active monitoring, I talked around having annual inspections, but ensuring that you have annual inspections over time. Of course, a specific annual inspection can identify issues at a specific moment in time, but unless you are examining that system over time as it's getting older, where the likelihood of wear and tear and issues only serve to increase, then what you're doing is you're fixing your system at a particular point in time, but really have no more visibility from an on-site perspective as that system ages. Something critical for us as well is ensuring that we can provide support, and we understand that for customers, they might be more comfortable or inherently contact their original installers. And so how are we able to deliver value, not just to the end customer, but also provide an extension to enable installers themselves to offer a comprehensive and coherent maintenance product? And we can then provide everything that you've seen here to installers themselves and EPCs themselves. And so they might use their own internal personnel, but for the reason, as I mentioned at the beginning, which is what's in it for me and not being a financially viable offering, we can now offer our fulfillment process, whether it be the platform at the front end, our scheduling resources, digital form creation or report creation to installers as well, such that the end user can benefit regardless of who they contact. They can benefit from the service and have a quality outcome in the end. And so for us, really it's around, does anyone on this webinar have existing requirements? Is there any pending jobs? Do they have any specific challenges? Are any systems underperforming? And ultimately, more than happy to provide a free consultation meeting. A lot of our solutions are very bespoke and custom. I've talked about the centralization and making sure quality is consistent. At the end of the day, we have our specific portal on the front end to ensure that we can deliver dynamic and customized approaches as well, and making sure that it's a quality outcome at the end. And so for us, ultimately, traditionally, what the market's been doing at the moment is waiting for the system to fail. And what we're trying to encourage the market to do is don't wait for the system to fail, but rather do something to prevent it from happening. We do that for cars. We do that for maintenance to HVAC assets. We do that for the majority of assets across a facility. So why not do it with solar? It's only absolutely going to cost you more over the long run if things should fail. So if I leave you with anything, it's that. You'll see our direct contacts at the bottom as well, and I believe the system will be recorded as well for your benefit. But that's me.
Awesome. Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Daniel. That was so insightful. I hope that everybody got some really cool knowledge out of this webinar. And there are some questions. There are 2 questions in the Q&A right now. And the first one is for Chris or for Diagno. And are there plans to expand into other RE asset classes clients potentially have the portfolio? So for example, wind and so on.
So our market research showed that the utility scale space was fairly sophisticated for asset intelligence. So utility scale solar and utility scale wind is sort of wrapped up. Obviously there's always room, but we are sort of laser focused on the C&I space because that's where all of our experience lies, but also that's where we found the gap to be. In saying that, yes, we are currently focused on solar, but the plan is to also incorporate battery energy storage systems and potentially also electric vehicle charging infrastructure, but certainly BESS. We have already plans in the pipeline for how to incorporate all those devices and what value we're going to add in that space. And most of our customers have batteries as part of their portfolio anyway. So no to winds and utility scale solar, but yes to other things.
Thank you, Chris, and thanks, Chris Young, for your question. I hope that answers. There is another Q&A question here, and this one is for Daniel. Industrias map suggests New Zealand coverage. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So we've recently engaged and onboarded a number of NZ partners, both electrical and module cleaning and bird proofing. So absolutely, we're able to provide support across NZ as well as Australia as well, and deliver the same outcome as I've described.
Lovely. There's another question coming in on PV life work between a good maintenance and a bad maintenance. So I think that this will be more for probably industry, so probably for Daniel. What would you consider a bad maintenance and a good maintenance?
So bad maintenance is not doing anything. That's the worst maintenance. You know, to answer that question sort of without sort of from a cheeky perspective is to not, bad maintenance is not forgetting about the asset, in my opinion. So a lot of, you know, it's not necessarily a one size fits all, but I do know that an enormous amount of time, energy, and money is put into procuring these assets, and they're quickly forgotten. And there's not too many assets where that happens. And I believe it's because, again, as I mentioned at the beginning, solar just sits on the roof. It's an area that people don't really go to much, and we reap the rewards of the electricity, but it's not in your face. It's not like an air conditioner or a car or something that's in your face all the time, shouting at you saying, hey, you know, you've got a solar system on your roof. And so I think the worst form of maintenance is not even thinking about it and you know, and thinking, hey, it's outside all the time, it's producing electricity, it's working, you know, technically it's working, well, maybe not 24/7 when it's dark, but certainly an enormous amount of hours during the day, exposed to rain, to hail, to shine, to heat, etc. And to not even think about, hey, maybe like what you know, what is my system doing? And so for me, that's the worst form. The best form of maintenance is a combination of active monitoring. A lot of customers do that themselves, but I think the Diagno product has an enormous benefit in centralizing that. If you've got multiple systems, they also have the machine learning and guys in the back end who are filtering the enormous amount of tickets that are coming in from the inverter-based platform, where a lot of customers don't know, is this relevant or is it not? And also, you know, a means and a pathway to actually resolve those, as well as having an approach that's weather normalized. And so for us, it's about working with the likes of Diagno to then say, okay, this is an issue that needs to be attended to. Let's now rectify that and provide a report on that. So I think that would be the best form, is a combination of inspections and on-site monitoring.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that explains. And now we have another one from Hiren Patel saying, do you have an AI solution for solar preventative maintenance? And I think that Chris will love to answer that, because that's basically what Diagno does.
Yeah, well, that's actually a really good question. So the platform at the moment is being built to detect and diagnose issues in real time. And so the way I've described that is still retrospective. But once we have enough data on the system, and we've been able to understand what sort of generation profiles correspond to what sort of issues, we should be able to detect issues in advance before we actually have them occur. So there's more subtlety involved in that, and because you don't want to be misdiagnosing something that might occur and then sending someone out unnecessarily. So you want to be able to do that with high precision and high accuracy. And so we're not there yet, but the training of the machine learning algorithm will never end. We're at a stage now where we think by sort of end of the calendar year, we'll be in a state where we can be a commercial platform and really add value. But as we continue to grow the platform, continue to get more data, to continue to drive deeper into how we conduct our diagnostics, this is definitely something we'll be looking at, because that will add a really deep level of value to our customers and to our partners. Good question.
Very nice. Similar to that, I think that this question will be pertinent for both of you, and I'll hear from Chris first. Is where do you see the maintenance industry in the next 5 years?
Yeah, Daniel's going to have a lot more to say on this one, but I just think that there's a tsunami coming, and there's going to be a lot of work that is required. The solar boom in Australia really kind of happened 2009, 2010. So we're kind of 13 years on from that surge of installations, and so systems are going to need a lot of work as they come towards the end of their life, and the growth curve is still going. So not only is there a lot of systems coming to end of life, but that number is going to continue to increase over the years. So there's a lot of work coming, and then Australia is in terms of installs per capita way ahead of almost every other country in the world, if not every country in the world. And so this same tsunami is going to keep rolling globally. So I think this is a huge opportunity for Australia, and for companies like Daniel's, and hopefully for ours as well. O&M is going to be very busy in the future.
Yeah, I agree, Chris. It's interesting. There's a number of studies. There was one by the CEC in a couple of years ago that they suspect 20% of systems installed in the country were installed with some sort of non-compliance on it. Whether that affects the safety, performance, or both, I think that's pretty telling. I was just reading an article this morning, in fact, that June we've installed almost 250 megawatts, which is 13% more than June last year. And so we're looking to have yet another record of solar installations this year. And so just like that traditional bell curve, the more solar that gets installed, we know what will happen in 2, 3, 4 years thereafter. And so with the enormous construction boom that started sort of 2016, 2017, we're seeing that, and that's only going to increase over time. And so I think maintenance in general is only going to increase, and I think the maturity of the market is only going to increase as well as the complexities. So I think that's certainly, if I haven't made that clear yet, I certainly will, that it's only going to grow in necessity and complexity.
Very nice. Yeah, this one's a little bit different. I'm not sure who this one's going to be for, probably Daniel. About power correction, so power factor correction, it seems like an area that can be worked on. Is there anything that is being done to help customers with this?
So I'm very quickly going to push this to Chris, because a lot of power factor elements can be done remotely. But I will say that we are seeing more and more companies being affected by power factor, certainly ones with high inductive loads, like whether it be refrigeration or what have you, which would be evident in poultry farms or supermarkets, etc. And we've seen power factor being a huge factor in which solar can negatively affect power factor, and therefore negatively affect overall electricity costs. And so power factor is certainly growing in importance. I won't say that just because you're a solar company you can do power factor. It's a different technology and needs to be used in conjunction with one another. But we're definitely seeing more and more requirements from power factor, especially with the advent of more solar construction. But Chris, I might put that over to yourself if you want to chat about that.
Well, one of the ancillary benefits of Diagno's, kernel of value is the diagnostics, hence its name. But one of the ancillary values that come off the back of Diagno is the fact that we're collecting so much data, and for most of the sites, we're getting consumption data as well, and we get tariff rates. We are able to tell a lot about the customer and what their needs might be, and so we're not doing this at the moment, but the plan is to be able to provide, as a matter of course, sort of business cases for the addition of power factor correction, batteries, load shifting, electric vehicle chargers, these sorts of things, and just fall off the back of the platform. So yeah, power factor correction's a really easy one to add to that mix, and in many cases, especially for commercial industrial customers, power factor correction can be a big cost saver and have a really fast return on investment. So yeah, that's definitely something that we're looking at.
Nice. I will stay on the topic of what you can detect then. And there is another question saying that regarding debris, is there any sensors that can help detect debris? And is it a major concern as it cannot be detected from PV parameters? So can you talk a little bit about how would you detect debris?
Well, we've looked at a range of sensors to add to the system. Looked at humidity sensors and infrared detectors and thermocouples in junction boxes and isolators, and maybe we get there someday. But ultimately, we made the decision to steer away from hardware. We've done some stuff with hardware with our customers in the past, and I guess that decision was fraught. And the way we're doing it now is much leaner. We're adding a lot of value, and I think that's the way we're going to stay. But that's not to say that in the future you can't do these sorts of things. A debris sensor, like maybe like a stress strain gauge, or I'm not sure, or maybe a vibration sensor, or I guess, you know, if you've got leaf litter or whatever on the panels, we're detecting that through shading analysis. So that sort of handles it that way. But yeah, there's a range of things that we can do, but at the moment we're really just sticking with this machine learning approach based on the data coming from the OEM inverter and third-party monitoring gateways. I'm not sure if that exactly answers your question, but that's where we're at.
Just to add on that from myself as well. Yes, there are soiling sensors for sure. I think that the purpose of this webinar is to show that in many cases, I won't say all, but in many cases, a lot of these sensors either aren't necessarily needed, or you can identify through smarts and machine learning underperformance. And so if you're detecting underperformance from a certain threshold, and that's weather normalized, so you know what the weather is like, and you have threshold alerts, and you can see that there's no specific alerts coming in from inverters or strings, and the weather seems to be like a sunny day, then and using a few other different metrics, you can determine that, hey, this is potentially something around shading or soiling, and then that would spark an on-site visit, which you would need to do anyway. The problem with the sensor is that its soiling sensor is located in a specific location. So it often wouldn't detect if it's from shading, for example. It might detect if it's from soiling, or let's say if soiling is grouped in a specific area, it might not detect that anyway, unless you have multiple sensors around. And so I think it's important to understand that it can be done remotely, and that once you're at that stage where you've detected underperformance, it should spark an on-site inspection anyway. Hopefully that answers that.
Nice. We had some comments saying that they agree with you that there are some soiling sensors, but you can do via remote calculations. I have one here that is interesting that goes along with what Chris was saying about how we get that remote calculations and how we read that data. So Liam asked, are you using APIs on equipment vendors portal, getting the data from that portal, or are you getting the data fed from the end customer systems directly?
Not exactly sure what you mean by the end customer systems, but where we get the data from is basically any API that's recording information. So we have a strong preference for taking the inverter data directly from the OEM monitoring portal. The APIs are some are very robust and some are not as good, but generally they give us a really granular data set as compared to maybe like an AC monitor, which just gives us obviously the AC side. We prefer to dive deeper into that. The other option is using a Modbus gateway that can take the Modbus registries directly from the inverter and pass that to an API that we can grab. But these have given us issues in the past as well. So comms, I think, will always be a little bit of an issue. I don't know how you get away from that, but getting the data directly from the inverter, whether it's a PV inverter or a battery inverter, doesn't matter. That's our strong preference. And with the inverter listing that we are currently mapped to, we cover something like, I don't know, 90% of the C&I market. So we're in a good spot there.
Okay, Lane has also added to his question that he's asking in the context of security. Are you needing access to our OT network? So I guess Lynn, answer me if I'm correct, is about the actual system owner here, the security of the system owner, I believe.
I'll just chime in there. So we made the decision to be read-only. We made the decision to be read-only. The system would typically allow us to do read-write, and we could do stuff like VPP optimization and dispatch regimes on batteries and stuff like that. But there are other players in the market that are doing that, and we again have decided to be laser focused on diagnostics and making sure performance is optimized, and O&M practices are optimized as well. And being read-only and using the systems that we've used, we use AWS Lambda and the AWS Service Suite to power the platform. And we've also been assessed for cybersecurity. It allows us to be have a really secure offering, and we can talk more about that offline if you have any more questions. But being read-only gives us the ability to crash through a lot of those cybersecurity barriers that you might have if you were writing to registries.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that answered, Leon said that the question has been answered. That's good. And we had on the chat Earl coming in and talking about the breeze as well. And Earl is our tech lead for Diagno, so he absolutely knows what he's talking about there. And he was saying that you can get indirect insights with earth fault resistance and all of that. So that's nice. If anyone wants to continue that conversation about the breeze or security or anything, feel free to send us a message or give us a call. I believe that the best email will be info@diagno.energy. Or if I'm not correct about that, you can pop in the email down there.
And for us, it's inquiries at industrias.com.au.
Inquiries at industrias.com.au. So for Diagno is diagno.energy, for Industrias is .com.au. Forget that one. And all right, do we have any other questions, guys? Anyone else wants to chime in? Otherwise, we're gonna start closing now.
Remarkably on time.
Perfect. Lovely. Thanks everyone that popped in. I hope that you got a lot of insights. I hope that you had some good information here. Again, this has been recorded and it's going to be available on the GSES YouTube. We'll send you an email when that's done so that you can access it again. And if you have any other webinars that you want us to do or any other information that you would like us to provide, feel free to contact us. GSES and Diagno, we really love doing webinars. We think it's a great way to communicate with our customer base. And we'll see you not only around the industry, if you're on Energy Next as well, we'll be around. So feel free to contact us at any time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.